On the surface, explorers typically rise early in the morning, but this isn't because they choose to. Rather, it's a result of their poverty. MC Rento, who is presently having financial difficulties covering his rent as a bronze adventurer. He needs to get up early since there are quests that need to be completed beforehand. It's a first-come, first-served basis, so you need to arrive early to avoid being seated next to the awful people. You will, however, need to venture into the labyrinth if you are unable to discover any quests that fit you in order to survive. And Rent chose to enter the maze created by the moon's reflection on this particular day, because that is precisely what happened to him. While Rent frequently works alone, most adventurers operate in teams. He claims there are several reasons, the primary being that he is not a good adventurer. In fact, despite being an explorer for more than 10 years, is still in bronze rank. He can live off the money the guild pays him as long as he can hunt and sell resources to them. Unexpectedly, Rent has a rather secure life, especially since he has enough money set aside for emergencies, making him superior to most ordinary individuals. Heading into the labyrinth, he discovered something that should have been impossible, and on this day, the cool, analytical mind that has allowed him to survive as an adventurer went on vacation. There was a hole in the wall that was just sitting there as he moved through the labyrinth, which had been thoroughly investigated. Since the map didn't show this, Rent surmised that the labyrinth had invented a brand new route. This was a significant find, and he also entered the obviously perilous secret room against his better judgment. The more he explores, the more certain he becomes that this must be an uncharted territory. And all that's on his mind is the possibility that incredible riches lie beneath the surface, just waiting to be found. He keeps exploring the dungeon carelessly, not thinking that there would likely be something guarding that treasure. However, even if there is nothing he can obtain, presenting this information to the guild would be enough to get him a lot of money. Usually, he would have stayed away from a place like this. However, blinded by everything she might learn, he entered this hazardous area on his own, without a safety net or means of identifying potential threats, and when he faced a dragon, his carelessness only caused more problems for him. Not just any dragon, either. This creature that resembled an angel was in fact a real dragon. Even though he had never really seen one in person, he was certain that this had to be a dragon as it slowly approached Rent. According to tradition, they can assume numerous forms, many of which deviate from what would be thought typical for a dragon. Rent was paralyzed with fear just by its sight. But even if he managed to move against a creature that represents the pinnacle of horrors as a bronze adventurer, Rent had no chance at all. Despite being consumed by a dragon, this person is still partially alive, but it only indicates he has survived. Although he is happy to be alive, this hardly qualifies as being alive. He is now an undead beast, a skeleton. He considers returning to town to try to make sense of things, but he decides against it for the time being when he learns that he will be apprehended and cleansed until nothing is left in the labyrinth the moment he leaves. He takes a deep breath and stands up. But before he can make any major blunders, he tries to remain composed and consider things logically. Even though he doesn't sense the dragon's presence anywhere close, he decides it's best to be safe than sorry and retreats from the area, returning to the labyrinth. He keeps traveling about in search of an adventurer to chat to, but it seems like they are all heading to a more well-known dungeon at this point. He might be able to locate his lone explorer and beg for assistance if he waits a few days, but in order to do so, he will need to be able to speak because he is no longer able to use his mouth. Even though Rent is also a skeleton, it chooses to attack him even though it can see the skeleton standing there from around the corner. Rent prepares his sword to strike the skeleton, but as he lunges in its direction, he discovers that his metamorphosis into a skeleton has come with a significant setback. Because of his skeletal structure, he is now so weak that he cannot even swing his sword without toppling over. Luckily, the skeleton that is assaulting him is also helpless. As it appears to have lost a leg, Red just chuckles and devises a plan of attack as it tries to rejoin itself. You won't be able to utilize the swordsmanship skills that need real muscle even if he doesn't have skin on all of his bones like this. But his decision-making brain returns when he remembers that he can use his special ability, Spirit. The second skeleton is about to reconnect its leg when he successfully uses the ability, and they begin fighting once more. Even though they are still both skeletons, this time around, Red has an advantage. His power to control spirit strengthens his bones and lets him wield a sword in battle just like he always would. He sidesteps and uses the sword to crack the skeleton over the head as it approaches him before shattering it altogether. Red exhales with satisfaction that he survived the battle against the skeleton, but to his amazement, the dead skeleton's body started to glow, and green energy started to pour into him. Ren observes that his energy from the battle has been restored in an instant. He therefore questions whether this is a secret quality shared by monsters. He recalled hearing his research friends discuss how monsters can grow more strong with age and experience, but their abilities are not comparable to those of humans. Although a skeleton can occasionally develop into a ghoul, it will always remain a skeleton. That is as a result of existential evolution, which she was studying at the time. Brent believes he can take advantage of this since ghouls are flesh and blood creatures who resemble humans in practically every way. If he could turn into one, he may also be able to return to the city by dressing like a robe and donning a mask or something similar. His new objective is to become a ghoul by killing enemies in this dungeon. Returning home with his researcher friend, she is a little lonely because Rhett isn't stopping by her house as he usually does. Nevertheless, she accepts that he won't be visiting today and leaves to prepare supper. As he advances through the labyrinth, Brent has killed 5 skeletons with success, steadily increasing his experience and dexterity. Additionally, it appears that the light he absorbs has a healing effect of some type, enabling him to continue using his spirit eternally. How even though everything is going well for him, Ren believes the time has come to try taking on one of the labyrinth's more formidable monsters. He moves along the corridors until he encounters a slime, which is easily vanquished with magic, even if it is immune to physical assault. Unfortunately, Ren lacks the skill to be able to use offensive magic. He is obliged to utilize physical attacks to defeat it because, at most, he can only use simple spells for all homosexual actions. There are 2 ways he can do this. Either he can disintegrate the gelatinous body to the point of no regeneration, or he can penetrate the slime's core, which is continuously moving within its body. He will have to exert all of his strength, though, because he lacks the strength to accomplish it ordinarily, in order to avoid being dissolved by the slime. In an attempt to dissolve Ren, the slime throws 3 acid balls at him. Fortunately, Ren avoids the shots and strikes the slime in the core, defeating it. While taking a break back in the labyrinth, Ren discovers that he no longer gets tired, and that, because he has no stomach, he has no appetite. He attempts to fight through the entire night as he can essentially run on a broke college student schedule. But even if it is insufficient to bring him to his next level of growth, it's not all bad. Though his physical abilities were far poorer when he initially awoke as a skeleton than they were when he was a human, he is essentially back to his previous state and possesses all of his pre-death powers now that he has defeated numerous creatures. Despite being undead, he can even use divinity. Although it wasn't what he had anticipated, it ends up being beneficial to him, because he uses it to preserve the bread he brought for a few more days in case he has to eat. Following that, he returns to his goal of becoming into a ghoul and determines he will stick to his strategy of eliminating enemies gradually and raising the difficulty level. He can manage 1 or 2 rather readily at the moment. It's unlikely that the monsters will travel in such huge packs, but the 3 could be a little challenging, and he's going to have to run if he sees for it once. Ren is incredibly weak, even as an undead. Despite having the uncommon ability to wield spirit, mana, and divinity, he spent 10 years traveling and had no success in his job. He didn't get any stronger in any of them, so he stayed the same, even though he knew deep down that he wasn't meant to be an adventurer and that most people would have given up after a few years of staying at the same bronze level. He never gave up on improving as an explorer. He invited his companion to assist him in his studies of magic and monsters, and he trained every day. He even embarked on a variety of pursuits. No matter how modest, his lifelong aim was to rise to the pinnacle of the adventure world as a mithril adventurer, which was difficult even for those with innate talent to attain. He isn't going to give up on that desire just because he has turned into a skeleton, because it is only meant for the strongest adventurers, those who are able to save a kingdom on their own. He keeps advancing through the dungeon and eliminating creatures, eventually growing even more formidable than he was when he was a human, and at last, it transpires after eliminating 1 more muck. As the energy comes back into him and all of his muscles grow back, he feels as though something unusual is happening to his body. He's turned into a ghoul. His expression is expressionless, although he is incredibly eager, even though it is decomposing and dried out. He now has skin again. If he persists in doing so, he might eventually change into a vampire, at which point you will both appear precisely the same and he can resume his regular life. He can communicate again for the time being. However, it will take some work to speak clearly again, because he is more than just a bone. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click on the videos on the screen for more contents like this. I will see you over there, and don't forget to subscribe. Arigato.